right, welcome everyone. The hour of 5 o'clock having arrived, I will call to order the June 19th public meeting of the Vallecitos Water District. First, notice to the public. Before we begin, I'd like to announce that members of the public may watch the meeting live via computer or smart device by going to the district's website and clicking on the Watch Live icon. However, they will not be able to participate in the meeting remotely. Members of the public may also listen to the meeting live on their phone by dialing 888-788-0099 toll-free or 877-853-5247 also toll-free. When prompted, enter the meeting ID and passcode displayed on the district's website. Before we move to the Pledge of Allegiance, I would like to acknowledge that today is Juneteenth, the day when many enslaved folks in the state of Texas learned of their freedom. Today is Juneteenth, June 19th. So now let's move to the Pledge of Allegiance. I would like for Director Grosset, since it's your birthday, how about if you lead us in the pledge?
Thank you. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's do roll call. Please indicate your attendance. And we are all present. Thank you all for being here. Do we have any additions to the agenda?
No, we do not, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. Then may I have a motion to adopt the agenda for June 19th?
Move to approve.
Okay, thank you, Director Hernandez. May I have a second?
Second.
Second, Director Grosset. Please vote. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up is public comment. Do we have any public speakers?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Now moving to consent items. Historically, consent items are meant to be items that are not controversial, and they are to be approved in one fell swoop. We have many items tonight, but I understand there may be some discussion. So, is there a discussion about any of the consent items?
Discussion or just clarification on a couple, if that's okay?
Yes.
So it was interesting to see, I know we've done this, surplus personal property listing. That's just a public auction, goes to just advertised public auction, we sell vehicles or whatever. Nice.
Yeah, it is. So this one, I believe, is just for surplus vehicles that we finally received that were ordered through COVID, and then we finally received them, and now we have the new vehicles in our fleet, and now the old vehicles are being surplus. Is that correct, Wes? Thank you.
And those funds just go to the general operating budget?
Yeah, they go back into our operating budget.
Nice. And just one other item, award professional services agreement for the district solar management services. I saw that, and that's about a $90,000 every 3 years, but $30,000 a year. Is there a way to, how much savings are we getting on those solar panels? Is there a way to?
Yes, we're savings, and Mike knows the number better than I do, probably about 175,000-ish, maybe going to 200,000 a year.
About $200K a year, and
but-
it costs about $30K a year to maintain?
Yeah, but the rec credits that are being offered through the services equate to about $35,000 to $45,000 a year. So just having to manage and market the rec credits themselves pays for the entire contract. And then we still have solar savings on top of that.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Okay, and one last 1.6 as needed engineering services. That's just a list. We don't have any one engineering service. There's just a list of preferred vendors, for lack of a better term.
That's correct. So
Okay.
the engineering group, every 2 years contracts, they look at their workload, and we try out new consultants, and then also bring back consultants that have had past success. And then we just move. So there's no guarantee of work, and it doesn't circumvent the board process. So if a contract amount is above the purchasing policy of the general manager, even if it's on the as-needed contract, it still comes back to the board for approval.
Gotcha. No, you asked and answered, and appreciate that. I can move to approve consent calendar.
Okay, I have a motion from Vice President Pennock to approve the consent calendar. May I have a second?
Second.
Second, Director Ellithorpe. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, please vote. Okay, the consent calendar is passed. Thank you all very much. Moving on to action item 2.1, modification of wastewater capital facility fee. And I believe we have a presentation for this.
Yes, we do, and thank you, Madam President. So just to introduce it, the board may recall that up in the Twin Oaks Valley, we have no sewer projects on the books, but then we have development that's being approved prior to the original planning. So with that, we had no way to accommodate the actual development or the project. So staff worked with the developers and with the city to come up with both a temporary and a permanent solution. The temporary solution of on-site storage pumping to pump out when sewer levels are low was finally approved through the city, through a process. And the permanent solution rests on this action tonight to fund a new sewer project. With that, I'll hand it over to Jason and Elizabeth to talk about the actual cap fee and the process of it.
All right, thank you, General Manager Campello. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Tonight for your consideration is a modification to the wastewater capital facility fee, what we call our sewer cap fees. Tonight is a continuation of a conversation with the public and the board from our presentation on May 1st. So you may recall a lot of this. I'll probably go pretty quickly through this, but a few new wrinkles, but mostly it's kind of the same information. And that information begins on page 92 of your board packet. So objectives for tonight is to just give you a quick recap on the background for sewer cap fees. Also remind us why we're asking for an increase in the sewer cap fees and how we derived at that number. Also talk a little bit about a recap actually on the outreach efforts performed as part of this task. Have a discussion on CEQA compliance and how that was resolved, or how that will be resolved. Also some clarifications, and then a recommendation for the board to consider. So the board may recall back in May we had a discussion on the foundational documents for the sewer cap fees. And that's how the adopted master plan creates a list of CIP projects, and from that, that's to reasonably accommodate future growth for the district. And from that, that information, that feeds into the cap fee study, what we call that nexus study. And that information is then, that adopted document uses a growth pays for growth methodology to calculate those cap fees. And those cap fees are adjusted annually. We also discussed the legal framework for the ability to charge cap fees, and that's outlaid in the California Constitution, the applicable government codes, the Mitigation Fee Act, and case law. So I'm not going to go into those details, but those are all topics that we covered in May. And we can certainly circle back if you have questions on any of that. So why are we, what's the driver for these cap fees now? And the board may recall that there's several developments in the Twin Oaks Basin. As those went through Elizabeth and her staff, they did an analysis on the existing system and determined that it didn't have capacity. So just because the system doesn't have capacity doesn't mean it's failing. That system is definitely living outside of our preferred design criteria, but it has it can continue to function for the remainder of its useful life. But that being said, it cannot take any more sewer, and that effectively stops development in that basin. And that's what got us to this point. We can't unknow what we know. We can't make an existing system worse for our current and future customers. So we have to kind of stay within the guidelines of industry standards, engineering principles, the responsibility of a public agency. And so with that being said, we look at what is the improvement necessary to support these developments. And because we didn't have a programmed solution in our current fee structure, the board authorized us to perform a sub-area master plan, what we call a SAMP, to come up with a solution and then put a dollar figure to that, dollar value to that. So that SAMP was completed. We did identify a project worth $26 million. $6 million of that is funded through rates, and then $20 million is funded through cap fees, and that's the breakdown between replacement and expansion, that expansion being that future growth component. So we came up with that project, we reinserted it into the 2018 master plan, came up with a new fee structure, scaled that back up to the current date, and that's why we came up. That's how we came up with that proposed fee increase of $553 per EDU. In comparison, in 2019, when we did this as part of our master plan project in 2019, that increase was $3,023 per EDU. So in that same ballpark back in 2019. As I mentioned, this fee is updated annually, and that's per the LA ENR construction cost index. And then, of course, any new master plan, we will reevaluate our cap fees and adjust them appropriately. And again, increase in cap fees, which funds the expansion component of our CIP projects, is not funded and doesn't have an impact on our rate payers. And that's because those funds are separated, they're tracked separately, and that's all through our finance department and our best practices. All right, so what outreach have we performed on this project? In addition to well over a year of Elizabeth and her staff and myself coordinating with the in-basin developers and the city of San Marcos for not only this permanent solution, but also temporary solutions, which General Manager alluded to. We've also performed several public committee meetings in November, February, and March. We had a separate meeting in March with the in-basin developers and their representatives to explain what we were doing, talk about the results and the increased fees. We also met with the BIA and gave a presentation at their monthly meeting in April. We had a very thorough discussion here in front of the board and the public on May 1st. Our support documents have been posted on our website since February and available for review. And to date, we have had no public comment on the fee increases. So something new in the discussion tonight is CEQA compliance and how that's resolved. So and there's a very thorough discussion in your board packet beginning on page 94, and I'm not going to go through that, and I appreciate the attorneys and all their effort in putting that together, but I'm just going to summarize that the board's action in adopting cap fees is not considered a project under CEQA guidelines. And even if it was a project, it would be exempt. And even if it wasn't exempt, you still wouldn't need to have to do an environmental review. So confusing, but that's what it is. But I want you to know that any project that we do, especially CIP project, goes through an environmental review. And certainly this Twin Oaks Sewer Improvement Project will go through an environmental review when we get to that phase of the project. So I don't want that to be lost. But in the board adopting cap fee increases, it does not trigger any CEQA requirements. So that's the long and short of it. So in conclusion, there are some things I want to clarify. In May, we discussed the sewer fee increases being effective July 1st. And we picked that date because it was the beginning of the fiscal year. It made sense to us. Doing a little look at what we had done in the past boards have used a 60-day window from adoption to implementation. There's no law or statute that requires that. That's just a window that previous boards had set. So we've modified the recommendation to honor those previous board actions, but this board can take another action. But that's just how we modeled it, so you understand that change. The other new thing is now you get to see the adoption ordinance. So that adoption ordinance is in your board packet, and it's modeled after Ordinance 213, which is the ordinance that the board adopted in 2019. So it reads a water and wastewater capital facility fees. We didn't make any changes to water, so we're just taking water and rolling it into that same ordinance with the sewer fee increases so that we have one complete ordinance. Makes it very clear for staff as they implement it, makes it very clear for developers and customers as they read it. So that's just what you're going to see in the ordinance. And with that, the staff does recommend to the board to approve the 2023 Twin Oaks Sub-Area Master Plan and also to adopt the new water and wastewater capital facility fee ordinance with the fees becoming effective on August 18th or any other date that the board shall choose, and to make certain findings and determinations under CEQA as set forth in this ordinance. And we can answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you for all of your outreach efforts. I know this has been a long time building, and that you have tried very hard to involve a lot of stakeholders and bring them to the table and ask their opinions and ask for their voices and their inputs. So thank you for that. Do we have any public speakers on this?
No, Madam President.
Okay, all right. What questions do my colleagues have? Director Hernandez?
Can you remind me, what is the new capacity fee? And is it EDUs or a metric of gallons?
It's EDUs.
And what's the
So
new price?
So the current fee right now
Yes.
is at $16,506 per EDU,
16?
$16,506. And with an adoption, the increase would go to $20,059 per EDU.
All right, thank you.
I have a question about the legality of combining these into a single resolution or single ordinance. You know, I know that we are very particular about categorizing the money as a water district. Are there any, and I know that you've run this by legal, but I would just like for it said in public that there are no legal issues with the combination of putting these under the same resolution.
I'll let Mr. Gilpin respond, but yes, we worked with BB&K on this and no issues.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Thanks for putting this together. It's very clear and straightforward. How many people does it immediately affect, like in the next year? Would you guess?
Sure, and maybe I'll ask Elizabeth to jump in. How many developers are we currently working with? And those would be the customers who would directly affected, as those that we're currently in plan check who haven't paid their cap fees. And then developers that we see coming through the water and sewer study.
Yeah, so it'll affect any customer who hasn't currently paid their cap fees. So those could be projects in plan check or currently in construction. So the quantity of projects I would approximate between plan check and construction is probably about 40 different developers or customers of single family homes.
40 EDUs or 40
No,
times
just different
X?
projects, yes. Yeah, the EDUs, I don't have that number off the top of my head. If you're interested, I could follow up with you on that.
Just would be interesting to know. And then, do you anticipate they'll rush to pay these fees, knowing that the increases abound in August?
I don't actually anticipate that. Some of our customers that we've been doing public outreach is aware of it. Nobody's expressed any interest or any desire to come in and pay them before the effective date. Of course, if they asked, we would allow them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just for clarification, the developers can pay their cap fees at any time typically, and I can't remember when that decision was made by previous boards, but now developers tend to pay their cap fees just prior to occupancy, and those are financial decisions that, obviously they have to make, but that's typically when we see the developers pay their cap fees.
Sounds good. For any developers watching, good opportunity to save $3,000 per EDU for 2 months.
So I understand the timeline for adoption is we're also considering, and it has been a courtesy that in the past we have given them a 60-day window. Do we give our ratepayer customers that same courtesy whenever we implement?
The board has in the past delayed rate increases, as you may recall. Instead of January, we pushed it to March. We pushed it back. So we have done that in the past, and now we're finally on a normal schedule, a January to January schedule. But in the past, we have done that. So we've done that for both ratepayers and development. So.
Okay, what are my colleagues' thoughts about the 60-day waiting, the 60-day lag time between when we pass this tonight and implementation? Does anyone have any thoughts about that?
If it's been the tradition, it's fine by me.
I'm good with it, but I had a question too.
Okay, go ahead.
So, no, I'm good with the lag time of 60 days, that's fine. How does this compare the 20K with our Vista, Escondido, Carlsbad? Do we know how that compares with our friendly neighbors?
Yeah, so our neighboring agencies, we're definitely on the upper end as far as fees, but it's really an apples to oranges comparison, the way other agencies put their fees together, the way they structure their CIP projects. Some agencies calculate their fees based on EDUs like us. Some do it on fixture counts. So it's kind of a different structure. Also, other agencies are at different levels of development, at different age of assets. We have a lot of legacy sewer assets, and that's where a lot of our projects are a lot of these cap fees are funding. So it's not a true, a good apples to apples comparison.
And Vice President Penna, for example, the cities also collect tax revenue and sales tax revenue and also property tax revenue from sites. So they'll approach those fees different. And most of the agencies, there's really only two growth agencies in the county. It's Otay Water District and ourselves. So we're uniquely different when comparing fees and so on and so forth with them. And even with Otay, the way they structure their fees is going to be a little bit different.
Okay.
But we did do a tabletop sort of review, just, we didn't ignore that. That was something we did. We did kind of do a tabletop, and it was hard to find true comparisons. It just
Lots of
wasn't.
different fruit on the table,
It wasn't
huh?
really, it doesn't help to provide you that data, because there's just too much discrepancy, or not
Gotcha.
discrepancies, but just, it's hard to line it all up.
No, understood. Okay. Thank you.
So the staff recommendation is to pass the modification of the wastewater capital fee with the 60-day effective fee date. And again, please tell me why we changed it from July to August 18th, July 1st to August 18th.
So that was just to honor what past boards have
Okay.
done. And it's, boards discretion, we could make it effective tonight. It could be at the new fiscal year. It could be, it's up to the board, but we did it basically because that's what past boards had done.
Remind me, I know this is coming up in a different action item, but if we do pass the pump zone changes, when will that go into effect?
There's a staff recommendation for July 1st, but there's also a 2-year implementation recommendation, but both of them would be July, but it'd be a year lag for the second half.
Okay. Okay, may I have a motion to move staff's recommendation if there are no questions?
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Okay, may I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Please vote. Okay, and the motion carries. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you again for all of your outreach. I know that you really took a lot of effort, or invested a lot of effort to try to get feedback on this, and I'm surprised that we have not heard a lot
It's
about
a
this.
lot of effort from Elizabeth and her staff.
Yes. Well, congratulations. Thank you. Okay, moving on to action item 2.2, pump zone charges, and I believe we have a presentation for this action item as well.
Yes, Madam President. So while they get ready, I'll just kind of introduce the item. So as the board's been aware of, we've been to several committees and to the board on this item that the district is looking at catching up and trying to comply with our policy to collect 95% of the pump zone charges only. Just for clarification, that's the electricity charges for our pump stations. It does not include maintenance, repairs, or replacement of the pump stations. So this is only what we're talking about is the pump zone charges for those items. With that, I will turn it over to both Wes and Mike to present on the pump zone charges.
Thank you, General Manager Campbell, President White Hodgson, members of the board. So real quick, just to jump into your question about, because I know it's going to come up, the 60 days. Typically with the pump zone, since it's a pass-through charge, we don't typically, and we don't legally have to, and we don't typically give a 60 days. Whenever, it's up to board discretion, but it's typically July 1st every year.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I wanted to make sure, we have two sets of customers, and it's really important to me that we are treating them equitably. So I wanted to make sure that I understood the historical
Correct.
context behind this and that it was out in the public record.
Right,
Thank you.
understood. So here we are, we're following up on our June 5th meeting to propose new rates for our pump zone customers. And just a quick background then, we do have 9 active pump zones, there's 10 total. One pump zone does not have currently any customers in there, with about 3,000 customers. Back about 7 years ago, the board approved a 3-year increase to pump zone rates using what's called the weighted lift weighted volume lift approach, so it's basically a charge per 100 foot of lift. The goal was to achieve 95% recovery of SEG&E only costs, so any of the equipment costs or any other staff time is not incorporated into this charge. And it was supposed to be recovered by fiscal year 2020, 2021. So here's a map, and I did a little bit different with this map to kind of show in the north and northwestern part, we have the pump zones. I kind of listed the pump zones that are in there, and from left to right, it goes pump zone 1, 3, 2, 5, and 6. So those are all those over here with the amount of customers in there. And then on the southern end of the district, and in order from left to right, it goes from pump zone 9, 7, 8 to 4. And I know it's really hard to show on this map, but just kind of gives a geographical representation of the pump zones and the number of customers in those zones. So rates were last updated July 1st, and at the time, as I mentioned, we were supposed to have hopefully a 95% recovery rate, but due to numerous reasons, which I'll get into, the recovery rate was only at about 61%. And we did bring discussion to the board and the finance committee in 2020 and in 2022. At the time, we were having a global pandemic, so it was best decided to table the issues until a further time.
I have a quick question about that. The discussion was brought to the board in 2020 and the finance committee only in 2022?
Yes. 2020, we did go to the board May 5th or somewhere on there, and I don't know the date in 2022, but that is correct.
Okay. I'd like to have that date just offline at some point.
Okay.
Thank you.
The current recovery rate, I said our goal is 95%. Our current recovery rate is about half of that at 47.5%. And then we did bring this to the board 2 weeks ago, as I mentioned, on June 5th. So with that June 5th meeting, we talked about sending out a pump zone fact sheet. So it was just a very colorful one-page fact sheet that we sent out. And in it, it had the headings of what is a pump zone. So basically, as we mentioned, it's a zone where it's a higher elevation that we have to pump water up to those areas within the district. And so why do property owners have to pay a pump zone charge? Typically, most districts will charge the specific cost that it takes to provide that service to a customer. And so why are rates being adjusted? Again, we're right now at about 47.5%, and our current policy is to collect 95% of the electrical costs only. What is done to mitigate some of the increases, I won't go through all of them, but we've installed solar efficiency pumps, running them at a time of use where we're not in the high tier rates. And then if approved, kind of going back to my opening, when will pump zone rates be implemented? Again, it's up to the discretion of the board, but the recommendation would be to implement them July 1st and every July 1st thereafter. So the fact sheet I mentioned was mailed out to 3,000 customers on June 7th, so about 12 days ago. Of that, we've only gotten 6 phone inquiries from the public, and no speakers for tonight as of right now. And some of the questions that we got, I got one phone call. I tried calling the gentleman back twice, and if he's out there, I will only give his David G. I apologize. I tried calling you back twice. Your voicemail was full. But here's where some of his questions and some of the questions. I talk to customer service on a daily basis to try to get their feedback because I'm interested in what our customers their questions are. So one of the things was there was a little bit of confusion is that there was this quote out there that my water bill is doubling. And in hindsight, we probably could have done a better job in maybe discussing that. I didn't want to put too many numbers on this because then it gets even more confusing. And also the problem with sending out a fact sheet, it's not a two-way dialogue. So that's what tonight's for. So it is not the water bill that's doubling, it is the pump zone charge of your water bill that is proposed to be doubled. And I'll go into some of what the numbers represent in a couple slides from now. So another question that we have is why haven't we, VWD, increased rates the past several years? I just kind of discussed that. We did kind of want to bring it forward in 2020 and 2022, but because of the pandemic that was going on, it was decided to kind of hold off on those increases. And another customer was asking, are we going to back charge for the past years? Because typically if we were going to cover 95%, we would have increased rates in 2020, 21, 22, 23, and 24. So no, we are not planning to back charge any of that. So they have been getting the pump zones at a basically reduced cost for those 4 or 5 years. And then more information on solar. We did have a section in here that talked about solar, and is Jason still here, just in case, or someone? So there's a difference between, we put in here megawatt versus megawatt hours. So a megawatt is just a unit of electricity versus megawatt hours. So someone was confused about megawatts versus megawatt hours. But there is enough megawatt hours to have 340 homes on an annual basis that would feed 340 homes. So they were thinking it was just megawatts, so there was a little bit of confusion on there. So going into the pump zones, here's again the list of the 10 pump zones. Their number of customers within each zone, the current rate that is being charged, and this was the rate that was last set July of 2019, and the proposed rate. And as I mentioned, the rates are about double. Some are double and a penny or 2 pennies. I'll go over, what I wanted to do also is kind of explain that whenever I bring rates forward, I usually talk about the average single-family residence customer, and we always use 13 units of water. So I want to kind of back up from that because that is district-wide 13 units. And it's hard to, if a customer in pump zone 4 calls me and says, well, how much is my bill going to be? I can't really use the 13 units. So what I did is I was able to take the data, extract the data from each of these zones and find the average for each zone. So I thought it was more appropriate and give me more detailed information to pass along to the customers and to the board. So I'll go into that in a minute. So why are there reasons for the shortfall? Why are we not collecting the 95%? Well, a couple of reasons. Well, the demand in the pump zone decreased over the past 10 years due to conservation, drought, and rainfall. So this is a chart showing the demand over the last 10 or so years. The blue chart is the total demand in all 10 pump zones. Back in 2014-15, we had about 1 million units of water being served by these customers. And in today, it's about 728,000 units of water. The red line shows the average use by customer in all 10 pump zones. So back 10 years ago, the average use was about 29 units of water. And today it's about 20 units of water. So a decrease of 31%. So an example, I've talked about this too, when you have some fixed charges, which SDG&E about 30 to 40% of their bill is fixed, and you have less units to divide that over, the rate is automatically going to go up. And one example I kind of wanted to use was like if you were sharing an apartment with 3 friends. So there's 4 of you total and the rent was $1,200 a month. Well, each of you is going to pay $300. Well, if Joe moves out and you have no one to replace him, that $1,200 now gets divided by 3 people. So your rent automatically increased from $300 a month to $400 a month with no rate increase. So that's part of the reason why the discrepancy between being 47% and what we want at 95%. The other thing is, if then the landlord then increases that rent from $1,200 to $1,500, now you're dividing that $1,500 divided by 3 people now, and your share is $500. So within a matter of months, you went from $300 to $400 to $500, a 67% increase. So they kind of piggyback on one another. So SDG&E, back in 2014-15, our average cost for lift, 100 foot of lift, was about 30 cents per unit. Today, that cost is about $1.02, and that's a direct cost from SDG&E. So that's a 240% increase in 10 years. So here's where I wanted to delineate per pump zone and kind of give you a little bit of an example. Again, I talked about the average of 13 units a month. I'll kind of give a detailed example of pump zone 1, but I won't go into the details for the other 9 because they're basically calculated the same. So on pump zone 1, the actual average in that zone is 53 units of water. So probably bigger lots, maybe some agriculture up there, maybe a bigger meter also. So a customer that's using the average in that zone would see about a 3.42% overall increase, or about $16 a month. So I did all the other zones as well. Again, I won't go into the specifics of each one, but the increase ranges from about 0.9% to 8.22%. Again, that depends on how many units you use, what's your meter size, and how many lift of feet there is in each of those zones. oh, the one thing I wanted to say is too, now if I'm using the overall average, it's the bottom line down here. So the overall average increase of all 3,000 pump zone customers would be about 4.9% or $9.53. And again, as our ex-general manager used to say, your mileage may vary, right? It really depends on your particular usage. So again, the average pump zone using that, and the average pump zone customer uses about 20 units of water. I know I'm getting into a lot of numbers. It makes me excited. You're probably bored to death. But so the average customer uses about 20 units of water, as I mentioned. So that particular customer using 20 units of water, their full bill is about $195 right now. With the increase, that particular customer, their bill will go up to $204. General Manager Campbell alluded to that we have an option of phasing it in over 2 years. That bill would go about almost to $200. So what does that mean? Again, we talked about the 4.9% for the full phase-in of $9.53. If we were to phase it in, it'd be about 2.6%, or about $5 per month. So I mentioned earlier that the average range increase would be about a little less than 1% up to 8.2% with a full phase-in. So real quick, with a full phase-in, revenues would then achieve the 95% recovery of SDG&E costs. With a 2-year phase-in, and I have a little asterisk there, so I'll get to that in a second, revenues would cover about 72% of SDG&E costs in year 1. So the deficit, the delta between the 72% and 95% is about $170,000. And if there's no change in pump zone rates, revenues would still only recover that 47% that I talked about, with a deficit of $344,000 and growing. The one issue with doing a 2-year phase-in, like we did with the 3-year phase-in back in 2017, is that we don't know what the SDG&E rate increases are going to be for next year. So not only would we have to do the second step of that increase, it would also be that unknown 5%, 10%, 15% of SDG&E. So my recommendation is to do it all in a full phase, obviously up to the discretion of the board, so we don't run into that issue. So real quick, just some of the pros and cons of each of these, either full phase-in, 2-year phase-in, or delaying it. So the full phase-in would then achieve, as I mentioned, the recovery of 95% of electricity in this current fiscal year, which is what is in the budget. And we do have a system then in place for future year fiscal adjustments that would be tied to the budgeted increase per 100-foot lift of water from SDG&E. So it's basically a pass-through cost. As I mentioned, it went from 30 cents back 10 years ago to $1.02 now. If we did a 2-year phase-in, the pro would be that at least within 2 years, there would be a 95% recovery. And again, there'd be a system in place for future year adjustment. However, it would leave the gap of about $170,000 this year, or this coming fiscal year. And if we were to delay it, it really just temporarily delays the increase to the 3,000 pump zones. There would be some inequity between the customers because that money would then have to be made up by all 22,000 customers. There's an increase in disparity between our revenue and expenses. Right now, we do have it budgeted in our budget for the full 95% recovery. There may be potential legal issues with Prop 218. And then next year, like I mentioned, because we don't know the SDG&E increases, not only would we have to increase it to get to 95%, but we would have to also bump it up by whatever that SDG&E unknown increase is. So timing and logistics. So the pump zone increases. So as proposed, the full increase would go into effect July 1st, 2024 for bills mailed out on or after August 1st, 2024. And any next increases would be July 1st, 2025, and every subsequent July 1st. And as I mentioned, be based on SDG&E cost increases per 100 foot of lift. And with that, the staff recommends that the board approve the new pump zone rates to be effective July 1st, 2024, and to update rates with the approved budget each subsequent July 1st to be indexed with the pass-through budgeted increases per 100 foot of lift from SDG&E or their successor in order to capture a 95% rate recovery of pump zone electrical costs. And with that, we're open for discussion.
Thank you for the presentation. Some of the things that you talked about tonight are a little bit different than what I heard in the P3 meeting. What questions do my colleagues have? Discussion points, opinions?
I actually talked to a friend of mine / customer / pump zone customer. So he had 2 questions and I just want clarification. One, as far as the phase in, the customers that live out in North Twin Oaks Valley, a lot of them use a lot of water, they're larger bills. They appreciate an incremental increase they can live through incremental increases. It's tough to live through a spike. So they do appreciate, I can handle, $40, $50, $60 a month increase, but if all of a sudden they come with us in 2 years and it's 300, then I'm in trouble. And in the second question, I told him it's not likely, but SDG&E currently has very high rates. They had a spike recently. His question was, and I told him it's not likely, if they ever lower their rates, would we lower our rates as far as a pass-through?
So that answer to that is absolutely.
So it's strictly a pass-through.
It's strictly a
If for
pass-through.
some crazy reason SDG&E decides to lower rates, customers would also receive the benefit.
Correct.
Okay.
And the same with, real quick, if CWA next year were to say, hey, we're gonna reduce rates 20%, we'd also pass that through to our customer.
Same, pass it through.
Not
okay.
likely.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay, no, and with that, I like I like what you said, and I'm for a full phase-in effective July 1.
Okay. Director Hernandez, what are your thoughts?
Excellent presentation, very thorough, well thought out, easy to follow. I have no questions.
Even all those numbers?
Even without, they're right here in front of you. Don't have to think about anything.
It's all right there.
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, I support the full phase-in, and it's been 5 years since we've raised rates, and we're way, way behind the curve. And we need to get this up to current rates. So, July 1, full phase-in. So.
Okay. Director Grosset?
I'm in the minority here, but I'm mostly against this because of the arbitrary enforcement of it. And I think it's unfair to the customers to be immediately affected by this. Well, they could potentially face an additional rate increase next year. And I'm not entirely thrilled that they've had very limited time to act on it.
You mean the information?
Correct.
Okay. So my thoughts are, I'm angry about this. I think, as we learned in the P3 committee, there's been a time period where we were supposed to be collecting something and we didn't do it. And then there was a resolution passed and we still didn't do it. And the explanation we got during the P3 committee was because there's some calculation mistakes made. And I didn't hear that tonight. And I don't know where the accountability for that is. It might be the case that the person who was responsible for that is no longer here. But I feel like it's a lot to ask, since we are we have some culpability as past boards and current boards that we haven't been collecting what we were supposed to collect. And I am in favor of a 2-year phase-in, and I wonder if there's ways that we can think creatively about the $170,000 gap, if there's a way that we can reduce that, find 50% of that money elsewhere, or write it down, dip into our reserves, or something to try to make it a little bit more fair, because I'm not hearing any accountability for us being behind over a decade. And I know that during COVID, we said we were not going to raise rates and we were not going to, I don't actually remember talking about pump zone charges. That was pretty early when I was on the board, so it's possible that we did and I just don't remember it. But I wouldn't change that vote because 1 in 4 people in North County lost their jobs and we weren't going to keep trying to keep up at that time. So I am prepared to be accountable for that. But a decade worth of being behind is really, it's disappointing, and I'm angry about it because now, I'm gonna have to make a decision, and being in a leadership means that you have to make tough decisions. We have to pick this, we have to catch up. We have to catch up, or we're going to be kicking it down the road, and always behind. What I'm suggesting is that we do it in a measured way, like maybe the 2-year phase-in, or the Can you go back, show what the options are again?
I can do it
Oh, no,
either in here or in here.
This, okay. So with the 2-year phase-in, I'm looking down at the bottom, number 2, we would hit 72% of SDG&E costs with a deficit of 170 in year 1, but then by year 2, we would be at 95, is that right?
Yes,
Because we would tie it to whatever the increase is of SDG&E?
right, and we wouldn't know what the year 2 charge would be until after we got the amount from SDG&E.
But we would have something in place saying, whatever it is, we're going to hit 95.
Correct.
And by the way, why aren't we doing 100? Because our policy says 95? I mean,
That's correct, ma'am. Right
Okay.
now, our policy says we're collecting 95% because there's an incremental benefit to the people below in case of emergency to move that water back downhill.
okay, I understand. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I'm in favor of the 2-year phase-in, and I wonder if I would like to explore ways that we could potentially reduce that 170 in a creative way. Would it be possible to maybe split it, cover half of it with reserves?
Well, technically, all of it would be covered by reserves, which would then go into the next,
That's what we've been doing.
That's where the money's been coming from,
Right.
the gap so far.
right, which would then go
Okay.
into the next revenue requirement when we set actual water rates.
Yeah, but by
Okay.
not collecting the full recovery amount from the pump zone customers, the rest of the district's been subsidizing this for the last 5 years, or 5+ years.
Yeah,
So it's not fair to the 20,000 customers.
Yeah, I understand that too. It's a really hard decision, and there's no good option because people in my district are saying, well, why now? Why are you doing this now? Why haven't you been doing it?
Well, we're not back charging.
Yeah, when are we starting the charge?
No, so just for clarification, for the record, so if past boards or past actions undercollected, we're not going to be back charging. So there's going to be no penalty for the district not collecting over the past 10 years. The actions in 2017 was trying to get the charges back up to policy, which was 95%. There was 3 years of rate increases, but obviously between reduction in demand and SCG rate increases, we never made that. And then the 2 times in 2022 was the attempt to make up for the difference. If adopted as a single, right now the staff recommendation is, and if the board were to adopt the staff recommendation, it'd be in effect in July 1st. Billings would not be affecting customers until August, sometime after August. So there'd be they would see that bill in August sometime. If there's a 2-year phase-in, it's the same thing. The bills in July 1st, they'd see a partial increase for the bills in August. And then the subsequent years, we'd have the remainder of the pass-through existing, plus whatever SDG&E does. And then those bills would be first hit customers' wallets in August.
So we, just so I'm clear, because we were shown a chart from 2014 in the P3 committee of how, what the disparity is every year, 43%, 53%, 56%, et cetera. So we are starting right now, all the past years, we're starting this year right now, moving forward. We are not, the gap would be 170 only. It's not any accumulation from any prior year.
That's
That-
correct, ma'am. There's no
Okay.
accumulation from prior years, no pass-through from uncollected revenue, because those revenue sources have already been come out of reserves, and they've already gone into revenue requirements that have gone into our rate structure.
That's great news. That this is I think new information from the meeting at the P3. So that's great news. Okay, so the staff recommendation is to implement immediately, not the 2-year phase-in. Okay, I'm going to move that we implement over a 2-year phase-in. Can I have a second for that? No second. Okay, that motion fails. I will move staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, second by Director Hernandez. Any further discussion? Okay, please vote. Okay. Four and one against.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you for all those.
My pleasure.
Okay, moving on to action item 2.3, project acceptance for the Montiel Lift Station and Force Main Replacement Project, Montiel Force Main and Gravity Sewer Improvements. I
Yes,
believe we have a presentation for this.
Yes, we do, Madam President. So in an effort to change the tone of the board meeting, we're going to start moving into our construction jobs and hopefully end up on some highlights. And this itself is a highlight. So while staff gets ready, we'll have Ryan Morgan, our senior engineer, and Jason Hubbard, district engineer, presenting this item. So the Montiel Lift Station and Force Main, as you may recall, was split into two projects, and this is the acceptance of the linear project, which is the actual force main. The pump station itself is still forthcoming. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ryan Morgan.
All right, thank you. Thank you, General Manager Gumpel. Good evening, directors, and I'm very excited to bring the project acceptance for the Montiel Lift Station and Force Main Replacement Project, the Force Main and Gravity Sewer Improvements, before the board tonight. This action really represents a major milestone for the Montiel Lift Station Replacement suite of improvements. As you may remember, the Montiel Lift Station was originally installed as a temporary facility in 1985. It conveys wastewater being collected in the Montiel sewer shed through a 6-inch diameter force main, which travels in Montiel Road and also through the Nordall Marketplace. This is considered a critical infrastructure asset, which has several deficiencies and is at the end of its useful life. The board is familiar with this project, acting during past project milestones dating back to November of 2019, with professional services agreement award to Michael Baker International for design engineering services. 4 amendments were authorized on the design contract to Michael Baker, totaling $246,193. That's itemized on page 117 of your board packet. Final design was completed in January 2023. And after receiving only one bid in March of 2023, staff repackaged the projects into 2 separate CIP projects. Today, the Montiel Lift Station Replacement Project consists of 2 individual projects consisting of 1, the sewer lift station replacement, and 2, the new force main replacement and gravity sewer rehabilitation. Staff received competitive bids, and on June 21st, 2023, the board awarded SRK a construction contract in the amount of $1,644,622, along with a professional services agreement with Vallecitos for construction management and inspection services in the amount of $378,076. Construction began in September of 2023, and by January 2024, SRK had completed most of the work except for the gravity sewer rehabilitation. During cleaning of the existing sewer, SRK encountered significant inflow and infiltration and refused to proceed with the CIPP lining work, claiming it could not be successfully executed. Despite SRK's resistance to install the contractual CIPP liner, staff and Vallecitos reviewed the condition of the sewer with SandCon Technologies and determined that the sewer could successfully be rehabilitated with the use of a proprietary ultraviolet liner technology. And in coordinating alternative methods to SRK's contractual sewer lining work, SRK agreed to remove this work from their contract along with the associated manhole rehab work. The board awarded SandCon a contract in the amount of $251,900 for the sewer lining, and on April 3rd of this year, staff executed a contract agreement with Zebron Technologies in the amount of $19,480 to complete the remaining manhole rehab work. SRK's contract was reduced for not performing the sewer rehabilitation work per contract. This reduction assisted in offsetting costs for SandCon and Zebron to perform their work. Staff negotiated a total of 4 change orders with SRK, amounting to $10,267.87, or 0.5% of the original contract value. The change orders are itemized on page 118 of your board packet. Staff issued change order number 4 unilaterally due to the disputed work around the gravity sewer cleaning effort, including unauthorized overtime charges and associated prime contractor support labor totaling approximately $30,000. Final payments are currently being processed to SRK. SandCon completed the gravity sewer rehab work on June 7th, and Zebron completed the manhole rehabilitation work on June 12th. 0 change orders were encountered with the SandCon gravity work and the Zebron manhole rehab work. Staff provided project management services and inspection oversight services. Valley CM provided the construction management and inspection for the project. And staff presented the acceptance of this project to the Engineering and Equipment Committee on May 28th. The itemized fiscal impact is shown on page 119 of the board packet, and the project is identified in the fiscal year 23-24 budget in the amount of $2.8 million. With a completion of work between SRK, SandCon, Zebron, Michael Baker, Valley CM, staff labor and overhead, the total project expenditure is $2,786,000, leaving a budget surplus of $14,000. With this, staff recommends project acceptance and authorizing the general manager to file a notice of completion and release retention funds to the contractor following the 60-day notice period in conformance with the contract documents. And at this time, I can take any questions you may have.
Thank you for the presentation. Great job on saving $14,000. That's great. This has been a monumental project, and it's really exciting that we are here at this point. What questions do my colleagues have? Go ahead.
Regarding SandCon's pulling out of this project, is there bad blood with them now, or are we still consider them for future projects?
With SRK,
I'm sorry, SRK, yeah.
we have I wouldn't necessarily say it's bad blood. I'd say it's more just business, in construction, these types of things happen. There could become, disputed, around the disputed work, there could come a claim, and if that happens, we're prepared to, take the necessary steps to respond and.
Meaning they might say that you wrote a contract and you owe us regardless of us completing this work, or?
No, that's not going to be the issue. That's been accepted. They understand that that's all good. There's some additional work that, as with a lot of construction contracts, they think they did more. We think they didn't properly notify and have documentation. So there's always a little bit of disagreement that we have, and there's a slight one we have on this, but it's not related to removing that piece of the contract.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, what other comments or questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to commend staff as potentially having a very high traffic area and a lot of potential problems, and they mitigated just about everything. So I'd like to commend them and move staff's recommendation.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Real quick before I say it.
Okay.
Thank you. Congratulations. Great. I just wanted to clarify some numbers. 2.8 was the total project?
Total project budget for the force main and gravity sewer rehabilitation improvements for Montiel.
Was 2.8.
Was 2.8.
Okay. And the 378 was the management fees on that 2.8?
The construction management?
Yeah,
Yes, Valley CM,
was 378.
378,000,
Well, that
correct.
just seems high, is it not? Or, I don't know, it just seems, usually it's what, 8%?
It's inspection too.
Yeah, it's construction management and inspection services, which involves 24/7 presence on site when the contractor's working. We have an inspector on site at all times.
Okay, so it's more than just construction management fees?
Well,
Okay.
a little bit more than that, because we were going through the Know-It-All Shopping Center, they had double shifting going on, so you had double the inspection time in a day, because we had to get through there before the Christmas season.
And that's lumped into the 378?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that explains, it just seemed high, because I know, usually where are we at, about 8% management fees on a project?
Yeah, it's not just the management. This is actually boots on the ground every day,
Oh, okay,
every
no, I
day,
was concerned about
inspecting and
the,
keeping
okay,
the, yeah.
that explains
And
it.
it's variable between the percentages,
8 to
but
10.
I just want to add that it's a time and materials not to exceed fee, and I can say that Valley CM is billed about 55%. So leaving a lot of that fee still remaining on the table is somewhat, misleading when you see the total fee and then what is actually billed to date.
Yeah, okay, that clarifies
And
it.
that's an excellent point on our consultant contracts, the way they work. Typically, we'll end up, if they're underbilling, we're reporting the worst case scenario. When we close out that project, that 14,000 may balloon up to close to 100,000 if the Valley CM fee ends up where we think it will be.
Okay.
Gotcha.
That would be
Yeah,
great.
generally we account for the contract amount when we show you these fiscal impacts. Again, as a sort of a worst case, but it's T&M, so it usually comes in less.
Okay, no.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I can second
We
if
have a
you're
motion
still on
and a
there.
second. Okay. Any other discussion? Nope. Okay. Thank you for your presentation. I believe we will vote to move staff's recommendation. Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for your diligence and your work on that very big project. Okay, now we are moving on to action item 2.4, and this is the longest action item title I have ever seen.
We want you to read it in its entirety,
I
please.
bet you do. I'm going to. Gotta take a big breath. Construction contract award for the Meadowlark Water Reclamation Facility, chlorium contact tank expansion and conversion to sodium hypochlorite projects, comma, increase the combined project budget, comma, award for a professional services agreement for construction management services, and award of contract amendments for construction phase services. I believe we're having a presentation, and there are multiple parts, obviously, to this.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. And on a side note, I think there's been an unofficial gauntlet has been thrown down between engineering and the presidency.
Oh, I got that. I got that.
so,
I'm going to have to wear socks with my face on them next time, too.
So it seems
Okay.
that titles are getting longer, and I've been trimming some titles
I've
too.
noticed.
So,
I've noticed. It's funny.
my only intro in this is one of the items here is these are two separate projects, budgeted separately, but they're presented together because to bid the project out together, it solved a lot of logistical issues because having two contractors working on the same time on the same site would have created not only a logistical nightmare, but probably a lot of extra costs to the district in change orders, delays, and arguments. It also ended up providing us more of an economy of scale. So what you see today is you have two different contracts, one contract for construction, one contract for construction management, and then you have the individual design contracts for support. That's why there's so many items. At the end of it, this is really a construction award with the proper backup and support for it. But the long title is predicated because it's really two jobs that is put together as one. And one of the reasons we kept them separate is one of those jobs has a significant amount of grant funding associated with it. So I don't want to take everything from the staff here, but with that.
Please do.
And this is such an important project, and there's a lot of safety issues also of concern. So I appreciate the thoroughness and the detail.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Madam President and General Manager Gumpel. As you mentioned, several actions are being presented tonight for the combined Meadowlark improvements, which includes the chlorine contact tank expansion and the conversion to sodium hypochlorite projects. I'm going to begin with the background on the chlorine contact tank expansion and then move into the conversion project and then tie it all together at the end. So for the chlorine contact tank expansion project, Meadowlark has two existing chlorine contact tanks, which is the final process for disinfection of recycled water. The CCTs, as we call it, were last improved during the 1982 plant expansion and received permitted treatment rating of 2.25 million gallons per day. And in 1996, the CCTs were re-rated. In 2005 plant expansion, the capacity of the CCTs were re-rated to convey a peak flow of 5 MGD by operationally utilizing both tanks. The CCT process is currently preventing the plant from increasing peak flow capacity from 5 to 6.5 million gallons per day. The CCT expansion project is an operational priority to the district. As a member of the North San Diego Water Reuse Coalition, the district secured grant funding totaling approximately $4 million under the Integrated Regional Water Management Proposition 1, Round 2, awarded by the State's Department of Water Resources, and under the Title 16 Water Reclamation and Reuse Program, awarded by the United States Bureau of Reclamation. The remaining project costs will be reimbursed through recycled water rates from current recycled water customers. The board is familiar with this project, acting during past project milestones dating back to April of 2022, with the professional services agreement award to Kleinfelder for design engineering and environmental services in the amount of $355,385. Amendment number 1 for additional design services was authorized on July 19th of 23, in the amount of $46,361. On February 7th of this year, the board approved an addendum to the final program environmental impact report. And upon request from staff, Kleinfelder provided a proposal for Amendment 2 for engineering services during construction for a not-to-exceed time and materials fee of $224,938 on June 10th. Now going to the conversion to sodium hypochlorite project. Meadowlark is currently permitted for use of 100% chlorine gas as disinfectant to meet state regulations for recycled water treatment. The conversion project will replace the existing chlorine gas system with a sodium hypochlorite bulk storage and injection facility. Completion of the conversion project is a operational priority, which will remove an existing acute hazard and alleviate existing health and safety risks and associated requirements to maintain several safety programs and permits. The board is familiar with this project, acting during past project milestones dating back to October of 2021 with a professional services agreement award to Consor for design engineering and environmental services in the amount of $421,921. Trussell Technologies was also authorized to provide technical design peer review services in the amount of $35,100. 3 amendments were issued to Consor totaling $430,516 between July 2022 and February 2024. The amendments are itemized on page 123 of your board packet. Amendment 1 was issued to Trussell in August of 23 in the amount of $49,875 for additional peer review and biological profiling and analysis services in the existing secondary treatment processes. The board authorized a professional services agreement with the district's as-needed integrator, Enterprise Automation, to complete the supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA integration of the conversion project in the amount of $254,293 in February. Upon request from staff, Consor provided a proposal for Amendment 4 for engineering services during construction for a not-to-exceed time and materials fee of $245,048 on June 10th. Upon request from staff, Trussell provided a proposal for Amendment 2 for additional biological profiling analysis and engineering services during construction for a not-to-exceed time and materials fee of $144,997 on June 4th. Completion of both the CCT expansion project and the conversion to sodium hypochlorite project designs were achieved as a district tactical plan initiative for the fiscal year 23-24, and construction is scheduled in the fiscal year 24-25 CIP budget. The combined project was publicly advertised on March 29th, and on April 18th, staff conducted a mandatory pre-bid meeting with 11 general contractors in attendance. District staff received an open bids on June 3rd from 4 prime contractors, with the bid results identified on page 124 of your board packet. Staff and council have reviewed the bids and determined that there were no significant irregularities. Pacific Hydrotech Corporation included a certificate of reported compliance for their subcontractor, CMC Steel, applied to truck and bus regulations instead of off-road diesel fuel fleet regulations. The subcontractor provided a letter acknowledging they were exempt from the requirement, therefore the district will waive this immaterial deviation. Staff and council completed the evaluation of qualifications, references, bid forms, and determined Pacific Hydrotech Corporation was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. On February 16th, staff publicly advertised requests for proposals to local consultants who were asked to present their experience in construction management and inspection services for treatment process improvement projects. On March 7th, a mandatory pre-proposal meeting was held and a site visit with 8 firms in attendance. On April 4th, staff received 3 proposals from Valley Kennedy Jenks, and Hoke Consulting. A review panel, including staff from engineering and operations, reviewed the submitted proposals and rated each firm based on the criteria set forth in the RFP. The review panel shortlisted all 3 firms, and interviews were held on May 7th. The review panel determined that Valley CM was the most qualified and responsive consultant. Staff requested clarification on specific scope of work items and entered fee negotiations beginning on May 22nd. Staff received the final version of the scope of work and fee on May 31st with a time and materials not to exceed fee of $788,840. Staff will provide the project management services and inspection oversight services throughout construction. The CCT expansion project recommendation budget fiscal year 24-25 approved on June 5th is $13,720,000. The project will be funded through an approximate $4 million in state and federal grants, with the remainder coming from district recycled water funds. The conversion of sodium hypochlorite project recommended budget fiscal year 24-25 approved on June 5th is $5,975,000. The project funding source is 100% from Fund 250, which is paid through recycled water rates. The two projects' combined budgets total $19,695,000 for the approved recommended fiscal year 24-25 budget. A total estimated combined project cost and budgetary summary are itemized on page 126. The combined project expenditures total $20,877,754, which results in a total deficit of $1,182,754. The deficit is offset by the $4 million in grant funding reimbursements. However, these reimbursements are not shown in the fiscal impact because the district is required to budget 100% of the current project costs. Construction is anticipated to begin in September and be completed by October of next year. With this, staff recommends the Board of Directors authorize the General Manager to execute the following actions for the CCT expansion project and conversion of sodium hypochlorite projects. First, authorize the General Manager to execute a construction agreement with Pacific Hydrotech Corporation in the amount of $16,212,780, subject to the provisions of the contract. Also, to increase the combined project budget by $1,182,754 for a combined total of $20,877,754. Also, authorize the General Manager to enter a professional services agreement with Vallecitos in the amount of $788,840 for construction management, inspection, and geotechnical engineering services during construction. And authorize the General Manager to execute Amendment Number 2 with Trussell in the time and materials not to exceed amount of $144,997 for construction phase biological profiling and engineering services. And authorize the General Manager to execute Amendment Number 2 with Kleinfelder in the time and materials not to exceed amount $224,938 for construction phase engineering services for the CCT expansion project. And lastly, authorize the General Manager to execute Amendment Number 4 with Consor in the time and materials not to exceed amount of $245,048 for construction phase engineering services for the conversion to sodium hypochlorite project. With that, I'll catch my breath and allow you to ask any questions you have.
Yes.
I have one thing to add. First off, I want to congratulate Ryan and his team, because if you think about it, there's two separate projects with two separate design consultants that they had to combine into one bid package. And those consultants are naturally competitors, so it was really Ryan, his team, and their leadership that got them to work together and got this into one package. That in itself is an accomplishment that he did not talk about today, but it's something I want to recognize. Second thing is, and Ryan said this before, I just want to highlight it, because this project with grant funding and our recycled water agreement and the rates that we charge for recycled water will get fully reimbursed the district over time. So this is not coming from our ratepayers or even our capacity fees. So.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you for the presentation and your work on this. I have a question, and then we can take all of these as one motion, or I'm prepared to do them item by item, depending on how the discussion goes.
I believe it's up to the board, and
Okay.
I'll let Jim correct me, but I believe you could take it under one motion, or you could still choose to separate out if there's a reason.
Okay, I do have a question. So congratulations on getting the $3.5 million grant money. That's fantastic. Congratulations on that. It looks like our deficit was only 1.18. So what happens to the other 2.35 of that grant money? Do we not get it? Do we have to give it back? Can we use it for something else?
So the whole project we'll get, so we actually, what's not in the staff report, because we just got notice, we got another grant award for the coalition. And it's $6 million, but our portion's another 700,000 that will go on. So we'll be at over 4 million. When we have project expenses, the total project expenses, this is for the chlorine contact tank, which is, I believe, a little over 10 million, is that correct?
Correct.
We submit those project expenses, and then we'll get reimbursed through the grant, and that reimbursement will go back into our funds.
Great, okay, thank you for that. What questions or comments do my colleagues have? Yes?
What sort of impact should neighbors expect during this time?
That's a great question. The neighbors should expect the largest impact to probably be noise and a visual impact of the construction, but, you know, the neighbors who have a view of Meadowlark now, not much of that view is gonna change. It's just gonna be an active construction site. During demolition, I expect to be the noisiest part of the operation. We are going to notify the neighborhood, the residents, through our CM, and also the contractor will be obligated to do so. So they'll actually be receiving multiple notifications of construction, and there'll be a project sign posted out front of Meadowlark.
Got it. And the trucks will be coming in that main entrance? Construction trucks, assumedly?
We are gonna most likely allow the contractor to access through the main access off Corinthia, and then probably have them park off to our easement off the back gate, and they can park down there, but they'll probably access through Corinthia.
Got it. Thank you, and congrats.
Thank
Awesome
you,
work.
thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add that there is no night work as part of this project, so residents won't have to deal with that. There will be a no drone zone overhead though, so we'll have to contend with that.
Keep an eye on it.
I know somebody to get you that drone access if you really need it though.
Okay, any other comments?
I had one, yeah. Yeah, take a breath. That was a lot. Thank you. And congratulations. Two little ones. There was some training for the old system that we had, chloride. So some of that training will no longer need to happen. So there are some savings there. I know it's minor, but we'll be able to just stop some of those trainings. Awesome. And then recycled water. You mentioned this is all funded through the recycle. Is there a separate bucket of revenue that comes in that we keep, a recycled water bucket?
And I'll let Wes come and correct me on this if I'm wrong, but recycled water is a subsection of our sewer funds. So it all rolls into sewer, but then what we do is we get reimbursed. So we create a 250, so sewer's 200, we create a 250. But it's a subsection of our sewer funds. But then through our rates, capitalization over time, we get reimbursed for those things over time. So and that's how we set our recycled water rates.
Okay. No, fabulous. Good job. Excellent creativity on the two different projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Would anyone like for me to break out these into 6 separate motions, or? Okay, may I have a motion to move staff's recommendation across all of these projects? Okay. Yes, thank you, Director Hernandez. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Director Elitharp. Any other discussion? Okay, please vote.
Madam President, before we continue, could we take a 5-minute break?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
It's only 6:15.
Okay, moving on to action item 2.5, construction contract award for the update restrooms to ADA compliance project. I believe we have a presentation for this.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'll be actually taking this one since this was actually tabled by the board. So this is presented by the board. And Anthony, if you go to the slide that kind of shows the actual restroom itself. So as the board may recall, this has gone through actually 2 board meetings now and a couple committees. At the last engineering committee, it was recommended to move forward with the ADA compliance, which is around a $68,000 improvement. And again, both bathrooms are relatively the same, so this is kind of the work that was included. And the board had an option to either go forward with that $68,000 and change contract award, or there was actually a do-nothing option that was also permitted to the board. In discussion, the board asked for further clarification and asked legal counsel to look at it from there. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Jim to see what he found as far as with ADA compliance and the legal aspect of it.
Thank you. The question that came up during the last meeting was relative to whether corridors applied at a 48-inch. I've had our ADA folks legally look at this. Quite simply, when you go out to the restroom, you have to open the door by pulling it to you. And so under ADA, you have to have a pull clearance. And it has to be 60 inches between the door and the wall. And it is not. It's 58 or 59. It is not 60 inches. So the pull clearance for those doors does not meet the technical requirements of ADA. You would be at risk for a violation, as we discussed at the last meeting. Typically, our folks indicated that they've dealt with a lot of folks just chasing ambulances, filing technical claims. Under the Disabled Persons Act, it would be a $1,000 charge per occurrence plus attorney's fees. So it's the plus attorney's fees that's always the problem. So that's where the risk is.
Question on that. Is that the most expensive part of the project, per my understanding?
Yes, by far. Moving that wall partition, as Director Hernandez indicated, is very simple. Moving the countertop portion of it is very simple. Majority of the work is when you move that, you're creating a new door, new entryway, you're retiling, you're making it look like a bathroom.
Got it. And then the next question, follow up to that, would adjusting that door to be an automated open door solve that problem?
I do not think so, Director Grissett, because you still got the door clearance, pull clearance issue there, the wheelchair having to be in front of that. There may be, well, I won't go there.
I see. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I was the one that asked this to be moved forward. And I did talk with the California State Architect relative to the issues here. Jim is correct. The door is on the men's side is 59 inches from the door opening to the wall, and on the women's side is 58 and a half inches. That is not in compliant. When I talked to the DSA, Department of State Architect, I told him about the partition in the men's bathroom, which is 59 inches, supposed to be 60. He said, well, can you move it? I said, yes, you can, and you can still maintain a 30-inch by 48-inch approach to the urinal. I said, well, what about the lavatory? It's right at 34, but the sink is at the top. He says, well, we've had this before. What you should do is just put a mat down to make up the 1/4 inch. That is the differential. We've got a $69,000 contract, but then with the added items on there, it's $130,000. I definitely am not going to vote for this if it goes forward, but it's been, how long we've been in this building? 20 years?
1997? Yeah,
97. So more than 20 years. And the old adage, if it's not broken, don't fix it, I'm of that mind. So that's the information I was able to find out.
And just to clarify, the motion, not the motion, but the recommendations was the increase, but the options given to the board was either go forward with that $68,000 contract plus support, or the do nothing option.
What other comments do folks have? Yes.
I would be interested in doing a substitute motion to additionally fix adding an automated door and automated lights. If you're going to fix it, you should fix it the right way that would truly help the people who need it in there, as opposed to just moving things around an inch, which is unfortunate need to do for this regulation, but what would truly help the people utilizing that would be automated lights and an automated door.
So are you making a motion? Are you making a substitute motion?
That would be my intention, correct?
Well, I think, yeah, just for procedure, you need to have a motion first before a substitute. And
Okay.
I don't think.
I'm not sure, okay,
Can Director Grosset make the motion, and that's the motion on the floor?
and so can you please clarify how, given staff's recommendation, how your motion fits in with staff's recommendation?
It would be accepting staff's recommendation and supplementing it with an additional request for the 2 items that I requested.
Okay.
Madam President, so as I understand it, just so I'm clear for the board and for staff, it's the recommendation is move forward with the $68,000 and change, almost $69,000 for the ADA upgrades, but seek out additions of automated lights and automated door for both bathrooms. Okay.
Okay. I have some comments. Is there a second for this motion? Okay, that motion fails. I have a comment. When we first started talking about this, I suggested that we consider all gender restrooms, and I made that point, and it somehow got lost. And I'd like to know why that got lost and why it was never discussed or pursued, or maybe it was and it was too expensive, which would require modifying it so that each bathroom is, yes, ADA compliant, but also available to be used by a single person.
Yeah, I don't have a complete answer for you, Madam
Okay.
President. It did get lost. We did have a brief discussion with our architect on it, and there was some additional costs, and we knew that at the time, we're trying to figure out how to get in compliance with the minimum cost at the time. So at that point, the decision was made to at least seek an initial ADA compliance minimum and go with that option.
Okay. Are these, so it's not too late, if you just put a lock on the door and put a sign on the front, after we make it ADA compliant, it can be an all-gender bathroom. That's the cost of a little plastic sign and a deadbolt. Okay, so staff's recommendation is to move forward with making these ADA compliant. I'm not comfortable with the do nothing option because now we have just broadcast to everyone that we don't have ADA compliant restrooms. And it is the right thing to do to make these usable for everyone so that it is inclusive. So staff's recommendation is to move forward with I'm looking at it, $138,000, 916 option. Is that correct?
Well, see, that's where I want clarification. I thought we were either 58 or 69, but now we're up to 138. What number are we at?
No, the whole amount is 138.
That's the entire project with design that's already been spent, support, and some additional support for, obviously during construction from the architect.
So the minimum we can spend to be compliant is 138.
That's right. The contract is 68. There's about 40 already spent.
Yeah, but it shows a budget surplus with that of 52,000.
That's correct, because originally the project was designed as a full bathroom remodel, and then we added the ADA compliance portion on top of that. So this redesign is just ADA compliance without a full bathroom remodel.
So the 138's net of that 52.
Total budget, good. Eric, you want to sit down for me? Sorry. You're getting above my knowledge level here.
But that 40K had to go somewhere.
Yeah, originally the whole bathroom remodel was designed by the architect and staff time was spent to put out an original bid package. Remember, and I recall it was 125,000-ish was the original bid.
Correct. The winning bid originally was $125,000.
At that point, went back to the drawing board with ADA compliance, and we reviewed other options, asked the architect to do a minimum design for us, which had a little additional expense. So I think total spent today, and you can help me out, is probably in the $40,000-ish range.
Including staff time, that's pretty close.
So we're about $40,000 in, is right now is what we're sitting.
So the total estimate is 138? Okay,
Can
138.
confirm the current bid.
One question that came up, our current bid for $68,000, is there an expiration date on that bid?
Not on that current bid.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? May I have a motion to move staff's recommendation?
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Okay, and I will second. Any other discussion? Okay, please vote. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for your work on that. I know that we have been around and around about this, so thank you for your work.
Thank you for your patience.
Okay. Action item 2.6, California Special Districts Association support for seat A nominees. I believe we have two candidates running for the same seat. And
That's
what
correct.
we are going to be talking about next.
Yep, Madam President, that's correct. So this is the annual vote that we take for CSDA. Historically, that's the annual vote, and historically, we've only had one candidate run, and this time we do. We have Jason Dafford from, I believe, Valley Sanitation District, and Joe McKenzie from VID. So today, before the board, for your consideration, is a resolution either supporting Joe McKenzie or Jason Dafford, and there's also the option to provide no support, which means no resolution.
Okay, and I believe we have, in the board packet, we received information from either candidate. Do we have any public speakers?
No, ma'am.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments from the board?
What's the position they're running for again?
It
Is it just a board member?
CSDA.
Just a board member, not like a president or anything like that?
CA.
Yeah, it's regional, sorry.
Just a regional board member,
Regional rep.
regional rep for CSDA.
Madam President, I would move to support Joe McKenzie for the position.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? I will not be supporting Joe McKenzie. She came before our board and could not explain how she would have voted on an action that was critical for our customers and has cost them 4% rate increases in their water bill, according to several folks that I've spoken with and we've discussed here in this meeting. So I will not be supporting her. Do we have any other comments? Okay, let's vote. Okay, then she has received our recommendation. Okay, I think we are almost there. Okay, action item 2.7. Approve memorandum of understanding between Vallecitos Water District and the City of Carlsbad regarding fire hydrant operation and maintenance. This is very exciting.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. It actually is very exciting. The board's probably not aware of this, but since before I started in 2005, the City of Carlsbad and Vallecitos Water District have been at odds about fire hydrant maintenance and replacement. So a little bit of history, especially Vallecitos does not own and operate or maintain fire hydrants within its jurisdiction. We have agreements with several of the fire districts, City of San Marcos being the primary. They operate it. They pay for replacement. We help them with work. We obviously respond to main breaks or hit fire hydrants. And there's a line of I can't even speak. Thank you. So with that, we have a very good working relationship, and we have basically either MOUs or agreements with several of the other fire agencies. So City of Carlsbad has always refused, and it actually got into a letter writing campaign that got involved with our previous legal and even our current legal between the city lawyers and us. So this got fairly volatile for a while. So starting in February, Vicki Korn, before she retired, and I got together and we started trying to work through the issue and the problem. And much credit to Vicky, and I know she's retired now, and I wish she could be here for this because she did a lot of work on her side to convince the city to sign this MOU. And just to highlight the MOU, this MOU is exactly what Vallecitos has been asking for. They are going to be paying for the maintenance of the fire hydrants. They're going to be paying for the repairs of the fire hydrants and replacements as needed. Good news for them is most of their fire hydrants, roughly 2,000 fire hydrants, are within residential areas, so they're not highly susceptible to high collisions like on main roads. So the risk was more tolerable to the city. With that, I have asked Ed to come up here to talk about this because this is actually a really big deal for the district. It's a very good win for the district and also kind of closes a chapter on a relationship that was a little bit sour due to this one subject between us and the city. And Ed has a lot more history than I do.
Just a little. I'd first like to commend our general manager because I've been here 35 years and I've served under 4 different general managers. I've been involved in this most of my career and provided a lot of comments, and not a single general manager has succeeded until James. So this is something that I'm very proud of him for getting it done. He's been very collaborative with the city of Carlsbad, and as he mentioned, it's been an ongoing fight between the 2 agencies. Just one of the reasons that I kept speaking of in my career, why Vallecitos should not be paying for the maintenance or the repairs of fire hydrants is we do not receive any funds for fire protection or firefighting. That is all gathered by the fire districts, and so they get the money for it. And so for our customers to have to pay for this would be wrong. It'd definitely be wrong in my eyes, and they didn't see it that way, but they do now. So I'm very happy that this is coming together. Give you a little idea of how many years it's been since we've had the agreement with the city of San Marcos. That agreement was signed in 1965. So it's one of the few things that's older than me. City of Vista signed the agreement in 1968 and City of Escondido in 1971. We have 2 fire districts that still have not signed an agreement with us. That's Deer Springs Fire Protection District. There are rural areas, Vista and northern part of San Marcos. And then we also have Rancho Santa Fe Fire. They only have about 5 or 6 fire hydrants that the district and the county helped them to replace them after the Cocos Fire, and it was Harmony Grove Fire District at the time. They were a volunteer fire department. Well, they were taken over by Rancho Santa Fe. I tried repeatedly to negotiate an agreement with them over the last, since Cocos Fires, several years. And they also refused, like the city of Carlsbad did. So we still do not have agreements with them, but city of Carlsbad was definitely, I think it's 182 fire hydrants that are within our district. So it's a large amount, and some of their customers would call us, and their public would call us and complain about the fire hydrants, and it went back and forth. So this is a huge deal. This is great for our customers and great for the public within the city of Carlsbad. And again, just want to commend James for making this happen.
Thank you. Thank you, General Manager. Excellent work. Okay, yes.
But what was their, it's their fire hydrant, and why would they not take responsibility? Did they have any reason?
I can talk that. So the fire department never historically has done it because it's always been due. So Carlsbad Municipal Water District, which is basically wholly operated within the city of Carlsbad. So the city council acts as the board, has always just allocated that duty to CMWD. So for their, and in defense of their fire chief, which I met with several times, they don't budget for it, they don't think about it, they don't have resources for it, that it's not even something they want to consider. So, because historically they've never had to do it. So that's really kind of where their starting point is. And since CMWD does it, you guys should do it. That was their starting point.
So on the other 2 districts, we don't have, if the fire hydrant breaks, we just turn the water off and say, too bad.
Unfortunately, for Deer Springs Fire, there's 2, I believe right now, that are blind flanged. And we repaired everything up to the bottom of the fire hydrant because they were hit. And then blind flanged and said, hey, all you guys have to do is give us a fire hydrant. We'll do all the work for free, which is part of our normal agreement. We will test it as far as water quality and everything, to make sure we're protecting our system, but we don't charge them for the work. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's a win-win for them. All they have to do is supply us with the hydrant, and they refuse because they say, no, the hydrant's yours. And we're like,
It's
"No,
not ours."
They're not. Well, I've had this,
I mean, I've been working in this city for 45 years. Every project that I have had that required a fire hydrant, I had to purchase it. Oh, no one else, not the fire department, not the district, no one. So this is just, I applaud you for finally getting Carlsbad through the knothole, but the other two people, I'd leave them alone, just let it stay there.
well, we do want to protect our customers, but the ratepayers, you know, the people paying their water bill, they're not paying for those fire hydrants. The
Yeah.
fire district is taking that from the taxes they pay, so it should be coming from their funds, not ours, and that's been my argument all
And
along.
I think a fire hydrant these days is like $5,500. So you're not talking about the detector check valves, you're just talking about the physical fire hydrant.
Yep.
My God. All right.
Any other comments or questions about that?
What was the trick to getting Carlsbad to agree?
Well,
How'd you get it over the finish line?
like I said, I give a lot of credit to Vicky because it took me a while to convince Vicky, and then she was able to work her magic with her upper management to get it done. I wasn't in those meetings. The meetings with the fire chief, I can tell you the fire chief still disagrees. Okay, so I was not able to win him over, but I was able to win Vicky over, and then I was able to win the city the city attorney over, which took a little while also. So basically, we had several meetings, virtual and in person, starting in February, and we got it done. Unfortunately, we got it done after Vicky retired, which was in the end of May, or middle of May. But everything was pretty much penned. We just had to get the details out. So.
Great work all around, and thanks, Vicky,
Yeah.
from afar.
So tell me again how long this has been in the works?
I worked on this when I started in '05 a little bit, but that's why I brought Ed up here. He's been working on some version of this his whole career, and he's had his 35-year anniversary, or it's either coming up or it's happening.
Out in November, so.
Yeah, November will be 35 years.
I have a letter from one of our general managers from 1985, and that was, he was working with all the fire districts then that had not signed. So obviously those three cities, San Marcos, Escondido, and Vista, signed a long time ago. But I have a letter from him to Deer Springs Fire in 1985 offering the same agreement and was turned down. And I think he was at that same time in '85, that's before I started in '89, he was working with City of Carlsbad. So it's longer than 35 years.
And one thing I'd be remiss to not say is it's true. There was work done in 2019 by BBK that really helped lay the foundation of it, and that letter which I revisited with Vicky, and that BBK provided was much more thorough than the letters provided by the previous legal counsel, which city legal counsel argued and wrote back on that one. So I think it's a combination of several things, and I'm sure that the city legal counsel had more to do with the interactions with BBK than me, so.
Okay. Well, congratulations, all. Thank you. Okay, so may I have a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding?
Move to approve.
Okay, may I have a second?
Second.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, please vote.
Thanks, Ed.
You know it's special when Ed
Yep.
presents.
Well, congratulations. Great work all around. It feels like we need to have like a ribbon cutting or a champagne breaking over the fire hydrant or something. Thank you. Okay, action item 2.8, revisions to employee recognition program.
Yes, Madam President, we do have a presenter for this. It'll be Denise Aviles, our Human Resource Manager. And again, like the last item, this is also a very good news item. So the district, really values its long-term employees, and we felt looking at the program that our prize, our certificate prizes, did not reflect the amount of value we have for our long-term employees. So Denise took the lion's share of the work here, worked through what we can do, did the research, did the comparisons, and came up with this solution, which I wholly support. And with that, Denise was going to present the new recognition program recommendations.
Thank you, General Manager Gumpel. Good evening. Tonight I am presenting the staff report regarding the Employee Recognition Program. This program was last updated November of 2018. HR has been working on updating our personnel policy manual and all 14 supplements. We looked specifically to this Employee Recognition Program policy. Side note, we will be bringing the personnel manual and all supplements to the board for your review and approval in the near future. Tonight, we're just focusing on the Employee Recognition Program. We analyzed the current structure of this program and looked to see how we could streamline it. Along with streamlining the program, we also looked at the monetary awards. After careful evaluation, we ended up making 3 changes to the program. 1, we consolidated the award areas from 6 different areas to 2, not including the service awards. When consolidating these areas, we made sure to incorporate the award opportunities of those 6 areas into the 2, making the award options more inclusive, not to lose any of the opportunities an employee has to achieve an award. Number 2, we also looked at the individual awards and we increased it from $10 to $20. And third, we increased the service awards, the monetary award, in 5-year milestone increments. Please refer to our PowerPoint presentation to show you what our proposed amounts are as opposed to what our current recognition amount is. The fiscal impact for the fiscal year 24-25 service awards would be increased by $3,125 by accepting this new proposal. And for future years, the cost would change depending on the number of service awards and the number of years the employees have worked. Recommendation. Staff requests the board approve the updates to the Employee Recognition Program to increase the service awards and individual recognitions. This concludes my staff report, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. What questions or discussion points?
Little one, no, thank you for all this work. Hesitantly, this even seems low. I mean, to be honest, it sounds like you went through a lot of work. I don't know, like you said, you compared. Why did you
did.
settle on these numbers? I mean, to be honest, $3,100 fiscal impact, we can find, I don't know. It seems like we can almost increase these numbers quite a bit.
Well, we wanted to make sure that, the employees haven't gotten it, so anything we do is an increase and is a betterment to what we currently have. We looked at we really wanted to start with $100, and we really wanted to end at that $500. So we tried to kind of look at it, and of course, as the general manager said, we look to award those employees that have stayed with us the longest, which is why you see those higher numbers. We felt fiscally that this jump at this time was appropriate. In future years, we'll see what happens, but we felt right now that this was a good jump for us.
Well, congratulations on even looking at it and doing that. I support it 100%.
Thank you.
Just one quick question. What is an individual service award? How often is that given and what's it for?
So that can be given at any time from the manager or supervisor. The individual award could be anything up to $20. So we could have gift cards. The manager or supervisor could say that an employee did a really good job and buy them lunch that day. It's really a way, we've opened it so that they have more opportunities to find that employee or that group of employees and do that $20 charge. So that would be like the individual.
Gotcha.
Well, we found out it used to be $10, but what we found out it was kind of jumping through hoops just to even get to $10 for supervisors to reward their employees. So we really simplified and streamlined the process. There still has to be justification, but now it's more immediate. They don't have to fill out paperwork, route the paperwork, and then wait. They could fill out the paperwork, get approved, and immediately get a $20 gift card, or immediately get reimbursed for taking their employees out to lunch, for working overtime, or getting a big project done. Those type of things happen. And then some of those awards and recognitions the board gets to hear on a quarterly basis. And a lot of times they come with a small monetary award, especially if they've achieved something good.
Gotcha. No, thank you. No, big support of recognizing employees and it's just, I mean, the morale it does for and we only have 109 of them. So no, totally support it 100%, and recognition is important for each and every one of them, so thank you.
Great, thank you.
Other comments?
Thank you for doing this, and totally agree with Director Penick. This should be 3 to 5x, in my personal opinion.
I also support boosting these numbers, and I think it's very important to reward folks for their service. We have a culture here that folks want to stay, and I think it's a great idea. I think the individual service awards is also a really interesting idea. In corporate places that I've worked, it's like a company bucks or something, and it's electronic, and you can. Employees can actually award each other, $5 for, hey, you had my back in the meeting, or whatever. I think it's a great idea, and I think it really boosts morale. And as we're coming back from COVID, we're still trying to recover from COVID. I think this is a great idea. I don't see any reason why I couldn't entertain a motion to increase this amount. Can I do that? If someone would like to make a motion to increase the amounts from what we have proposed here?
The board can, yes.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to revisit these amounts and propose an increase. I've heard that from 2 of my colleagues, and I have also voiced support. So who would like to make that motion?
I can make a motion
Okay.
times 2.
Okay.
Just multiply by 2.
Can you give us a number?
Well, yeah, it would
By
be
25%,
200,
50, 100%?
By 20, by times 2.
Double it.
Times
Double
two.
it. Double it, which would be the fiscal impact of $6,200, and you get 200, 300,
Right,
350,
right.
yeah.
Is that your motion?
$1,000. That's my
Madam
motion.
President? Oh, that's your motion?
That's my motion to
Very
double
good. I'll
the
I'll
proposed
second
amount.
that motion.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion about that? Okay, then let's vote. The motion on the table is to double the proposed amount. Please vote. Great. Okay.
Yeah, we just gave $130,000 for a room that nobody uses. So this is nice move. A lot of people use this. Amen, by God, I'm not giving up on it.
Well, these employees that will be getting awards at this next employee luncheon will be very happy at this, so thank you very much.
Great.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for your work. Thank
they
you for
should.
this idea. Yeah.
Thank you for
Great
your
work.
service. Thank you for everything you do.
And Madam President, you just signed those certificates, so you could see you saw all the employees that were getting those awards.
Okay. The numbers weren't on there, right? We don't have to reprint those certificates, do
No,
we?
they're just certificates,
Okay.
yes.
All right, okay. Great. Well, congratulations, everyone. Okay. I believe that's all for our action items. Moving on to reports. General Manager.
Yes, Madam President, I have a few. So first off is our employee luncheon, which we just talked about. Their certificates is July 11th. Lunch is provided, a gift to the employees is provided, and of course the certificates go out on that day. So we encourage and hope all board members can make it for lunch and of course the presentation. So July 11th.
11:30 or noon? Or?
Yes, 11:30.
Okay.
Thank you. 8 p.m. tonight, there's going to be night work on La Mirada and Pacific night work. That project is in preparation for our Las Posas work. And with that, there may be an opportunity for the board to visit the Las Posas repair job. Ed Pedrazi will be sending out an email to the board. It'll be Ed, because Ed will be sending an email out to the board to coordinate on that. So if we do have interest in that during the obviously opportune time for the contractor, and the board can make it, you could coordinate with Ed on that to show up, make sure you wear comfortable shoes and clothing, and then we'll provide you with a hard hat, and if we need to, a vest, and go out on a field trip and visit that site in construction.
And
So,
I'm sorry, what's the date on that again?
it's not set yet, but it'll probably be after 4th of July. I'm guessing maybe right that week as earlier or the week after.
Okay.
So, but the coordination will probably happen in the next couple of weeks, let you know the date.
Okay, thank you.
The district has put in all of its application for the Transparency Award and the District of Distinction Award. We've gotten positive, complete, our application to complete positive, nothing missing. So now we're just waiting for the final, basically the final award, whether we got it or not. If it does, we'll be coming to a subsequent board meeting and for announcement. I'm hoping it's both positive. Just as a reminder, every year they increase the amount of requirements to get the same award. So every year, the board's actions, along with staff's response and follow-through, has made us qualify. So if you just sit on your laurels, you don't get the award again. So the North County I already said this, we got an extra $700,000 coming towards that job that was awarded tonight. And reminder, there will be no board meeting on 7/3. Enjoy your 4th of July. And with that, I will be leaving town this weekend and not back until 7/8. I'll send out an email to remind the board. Both Jason and I are actually out of town, so Mr. Pedrazi will be the acting GM during that time. So be gentle to him, please. So,
I think we should have a board meeting.
so, so with that, and then last but not least, and this is a little far off on the calendar, but our Water Academy is right now tentatively scheduled for October 17th. So it's always in the fall, and it's usually a good time. So hopefully we don't get a heat wave, but it's October 17th. That concludes my report, and with that, go Thunder baseball, and wish us luck at Cooperstown.
Good luck.
That's awesome. Good luck. District Legal Counsel, Counselor Jim Gilpin.
Thank you. I just got a couple of items. One, I told you before about the initiative, the Taxpayer Protection and Governmental Accountability Act. It's an initiative that was circulated and qualified for the ballot. It would have tremendous restrictions on public agencies' ability to approve rates, et cetera. It would increase the voting standard from 50% to 2/3, change the burden of proof in 218 actions to a clear and convincing standard. The ballot measure was challenged by the California legislature, and it's been pending in front of the Supreme Court. And we got notice today that they intend to issue their decision tomorrow. So keep your eyes out for that. We'll see what happens. The issue in front of the court is whether to allow it to go forward on the ballot for the November election or not. So with that, with the November elections coming up, we've got some time to prepare, and several of the directors had asked me relative to just restrictions, et cetera. So my office has put together a package of information for you that I'll hand out to you after the meeting. The first one is kind of a memo of do's and don'ts relative to your actions. The second one is a combined memo and then a cheat sheet for you on the Levine Act, which was made applicable to public agency directors in 2023. It had previously been applicable to corporate and PUC type folks. Really, it's a pay-to-play restriction. Doesn't come into play normally with water districts. I mean, with the cities where they've got developer applications and stuff in front of them, it comes into play, but it could come into play here if we were voting on a contract for someone or an award. Well, it'd all be an award of a contract. So if you accept more than $250 in campaign contributions from someone that's in front of us, you're essentially disqualified, and there's a trailing period that applies to that. So that's really the campaign contributions. The next bucket of restrictions is the use of public resources. And the memo goes through this in detail, kind of the do's and don'ts. You can't use staff time, you can't use district property to campaign from, you can't solicit contributions from employees, employees can't be campaigning for you in district uniforms, et cetera. So the memo lays out all that, and I'll leave that to you to read, and then if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them at an upcoming meeting. The final one Chris is really aware of is mass mailing restrictions. We're limited in the number of printed publications we can send out with pictures of you all in them. So it's a mass mailing restriction. There are exceptions that apply to those mass mailings, but those exceptions all go away essentially when we get within 60 days of the election. And we've worked with Chris over the last couple of years, and our last several election cycles, he's well aware of those restrictions. And so I think the district's in good shape to comply. And so I'll pass these out to you after the board meeting, and if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, or we can discuss items at the next meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that report. San Diego County Water Authority, Director Elletharp.
Yeah, the regular June board meeting is next week on the 27th. No report otherwise.
Okay, thank you very much. Encino Wastewater Authority.
Our meeting is next Wednesday. We'll report after that.
Okay, thank you. Standing committees. So the P3 committee met fairly recently, and we talked about the Initiative 1935 that our district council was just speaking about. And tonight, as part of the consent calendar, we passed a resolution to stand against that Initiative 1935. And some of the other things that we talked about have already been discussed this evening. Any other standing committees? Okay. Director's reports on meetings, conferences, and seminars attended.
Yeah, I've got one. I attended an Aqua webinar on the 17th. It was titled Turning Electricity Reliability Challenges into an Opportunity to Save on Energy Costs. The technology that was discussed was battery-powered microgrids working in conjunction with solar panel arrays. The main benefit being energy cost savings by avoiding higher cost time periods on the utilities grid. The company presenting was Scale Microgrids. They've got several California projects going on right now, one right up the road at Santa Margarita Water District. And I emailed the presentation to the GM, and hopefully we can look at it and possibly find some applications. So battery technology is kind of the hot thing right now. So.
Thank you. So I've been absent for a couple of meetings, and for one of those meetings, I attended the Water Education Foundation tour of the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, and it was terrific. It was tremendously educational, and not being from California, when I talk about that geography, it is a little bit muddy to me, and it's abstract. But now that I have actually been up there to have seen it, and understand a lot of the complex issues happening with where we get a significant amount of our water from. It was really helpful for me to see that, and I appreciate Vice President Pinnock for taking over while I was away on that tour and for my child's graduation. I want to compliment Chris for his mail out regarding the pump charges. That was a tremendous effort to put together that mailer and to send that out, so I wanted to compliment him on that. I also attended a CSDA conference where we talked a lot about Initiative 1935, and we have already heard a little bit about that today. I attended on just yesterday a U.S. Water Alliance webinar on race and water and equity, and I found it really interesting. The U.S. Water Alliance has put out an equity toolkit, which really just is, asking questions about how, what your district is doing regarding infrastructure and where the infrastructure is located. So I plan on reading that, and if there's anything relevant and applicable, then I'll bring it to the P3 committee to discuss. Any other business? I would like to have, once we get through the process of the bathrooms situated, I would like to have a discussion about making them all gender bathrooms. Would someone agree with me on that?
Sure. I'll agree.
Okay, great. So let's, a year from now, when that project is done, let's put it on the agenda. All right. Anything else from anybody? Okay, thank you all for your patience. Thanks for being here. We are adjourned.